Why did you send this threatening letter on behalf of these two men who were convicted of crimes?
I was terrified of them and wanted no involvement with them.
So you wanted no involvement, but you sent a letter that says you bastards go in there anyway and a lot of people could get hurt? Why didn't you just contact the FBI or anybody, any local authority?
Because the person who did this act threatened people's lives if they disclosed who did it.
Yeah, in fact, you were investigated for being involved, weren't you? Here we have a letter sent to this committee from the special agent of the USDA Forest Service, Michael Merkley, who was in charge of the investigation. He says, and he details this in the letter to this committee, that he investigated you for your involvement. He says, and I'm going to quote now, grand jury subpoenas were issued for hair samples, handwriting exemplars, fingerprints. These subpoenas were served on persons suspected of being involved, having knowledge of the incident, including Ms. Tracy Stone Manning. You've testified you were never investigated, ever for anything. Why'd you lie to this committee?
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Hot News Today, where we break down the biggest political showdowns with straight talk and zero sugarcoating. Listen, the clip you're about to watch is one of the most heated, jaw-dropping Senate exchanges I've seen in a long time. Senator Josh Hawley absolutely unloads on the nominee, pressing them about past testimony, past investigations, and the extremely dangerous issue of tree spiking. And honestly, watching this unfold, you can practically feel the tension in the room. This isn't just political theater. This is a United States senator demanding clarity about actions that could literally get people killed. Blue-collar workers, real people, the ones who don't have power, connections, or protection. And Hawley does not let up. So before we jump in, do me one favor. Hit that like button if you appreciate politicians who actually show backbone. Subscribe to Hot News Today for more blunt and fearless breakdowns. And drop a comment after the video. Did Senator Hawley go too far or not far enough? All right, let's roll the clip.
Director Stone Manning, let me just start with this. When you came before this committee in 2021, this is before I was a member of the committee, you were asked as part of your confirmation whether you'd ever been investigated, arrested, charged by any federal, state, or local law enforcement authority for the violation of any federal, state, or local law, regulation, or ordinance other than a minor traffic offense. We asked that question of all people before the committee. You answered no. Do you stand by that testimony?
Senator, I do stand by that testimony and was proud to be confirmed to do this job.
What's tree spiking, Director?
Senator, again, this committee engaged quite a bit in.
No, that's a factual question. Do you know what it is?
And I do. It is.
You want to tell us? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's when people illegally put metal objects into trees so that they prevent a timber sale.
What happens if the chainsaw hits a spike?
Sometimes when a chainsaw hits a spike, it can buck the saw.
Yeah, violently recoil, potentially kill or seriously maim the loggers.
Yeah, which is why I notified the federal authorities that I had heard that had happened.
Loggers like, for instance, George Alexander, this is from an article on the Washington Post explaining what happens when trees get spiked. Loggers who are blue-collar workers, by the way. These are not wealthy people. These are not people who have had the advantages perhaps you and others have had. People like George Alexander, who, for example, in May 1987, at age 23, his chainsaw hit a tree spike. I'm quoting, his face was slashed from eye to chin, his teeth were smashed, his jaw was cut in half. That's a typical reaction when a logger hits a spike. Now, you just said, I think just a second ago, that you were involved. There were 2 people convicted in 1989 of putting 500 pounds of spikes in an Idaho forest. Senator Rich mentioned this just a moment ago. You testified you sent a letter to the Forest Service on their behalf. I have it here. The letter says, among other things, this letter sent to notify you that the post office sale, that's the forest sale in Idaho, has been spiked heavily. The reason for this action is that this piece of land is very special to the earth. It is home to the elk, deer, mountain lions, birds, and especially the trees. It goes on, I would be more than willing to pay you $1 for the sale, but you'd have to find me first, and that could be your worst nightmare. P.S. You bastards go in there anyway, and a lot of people could get hurt. Why'd you send this?
Senator, as I said at the time, over 30 years ago, a really angry and turns out violent person handed me that letter and said, "Will you send this to the Forest Service?"
And you did. Why?
What you just talked about in 1987 to a logger, this is 1988, 9. I understood that people could get hurt.
Why didn't you notify the federal authorities? Why did you send this threatening letter on behalf of these two men who were convicted of crimes?
I was terrified of them and wanted no involvement with them.
You wanted no involvement, but you sent a letter that says you bastards go in there anyway, and a lot of people could get hurt? Why didn't you just contact the FBI or anybody, any local authority?
Because the person who did this act threatened people's lives if they disclosed who did it.
Yeah, in fact, you were investigated for being involved, weren't you? Here we have a letter sent to this committee from the special agent of the USDA Forest Service, Michael Merkley, who was in charge of the investigation. He says, and he details this in the letter to this committee, that he investigated you for your involvement. He says, and I'm going to quote now, grand jury subpoenas were issued for hair samples, handwriting exemplars, fingerprints. These subpoenas were served on persons suspected of being involved, having knowledge of the incident, including Ms. Tracy Stone Manning. You've testified you were never investigated, ever, for anything. Why'd you lie to this committee?
Senator, this committee delved deeply, went into the court records where I testified against these men.
Were you issued subpoenas?
No.
You were not issued subpoenas?
I was issued a subpoena to appear before a grand jury.
Really? Because
about 30
here's what he
people.
says. Ms. Stone Manning was extremely difficult to work with. She was antagonistic. She was uncooperative, refused to provide her hair, handwriting exemplars, and fingerprints as ordered by the grand jury. It was not until after we informed her she would be arrested if she did not comply with the subpoenas that she provided the samples to me. So you were subpoenaed.
Senator Hawley,
you were the target of an
expired.
investigation.
Do you have a question?
You were the target of an investigation. You lied to this committee. Why?
Senator, I never received a target letter. I'm curious, I understand why this committee jumped over 30 years of my career in considering my nomination and went to a salacious moment from graduate school where I tried to protect people. What I don't understand is why we're not looking at the last 3.5 years now.
Here's why.
Senator
It's because people are killed in these kind of incidents. It is an act of
Your
terrorism.
time is expired.
A special agent in charge found that you were involved. You lied to this committee in saying that you were never investigated.
Senator
you were never
Hawley.
the target of investigation. In fact, you were.
Your time
You lied to us
is
blatantly.
expired.
And you know it.
Okay, wow. After watching that full exchange, I got a lot to say. First off, Senator Josh Hawley came into this hearing prepared, focused, and clearly unwilling to let anyone dodge accountability. The nominee can talk about what happened 30 years ago as if it's ancient history, but the fact is, tree spiking isn't some harmless prank. It's deadly. It destroys chainsaws, sends metal shards flying, and has literally slashed people's faces apart. Blue-collar loggers, people who wake up every day just trying to earn a living. Hawley brought receipts, actual letters, actual investigative statements. And every time a nominee tried to deflect, Hawley pushed right back. Were you investigated or not? Did you comply or not? Did you send that letter or not? These are basic questions that anyone seeking federal authority should be willing and able to answer clearly. And what really stood out to me was this. Instead of owning up to what happened, the nominee tried pivoting to, why aren't we talking about the last 3.5 years? But here's the thing. Honesty matters, especially in a job where decisions affect public safety and the environment. When someone says they've never been investigated, and then an official document shows they were subpoenaed for hair, fingerprints, and handwriting samples because they wouldn't cooperate, yeah, that deserves scrutiny. Hawley wasn't rude. Hawley wasn't grandstanding. Hawley was doing what senators are supposed to do. Dig for the truth, especially when people's lives are at stake. And honestly, the more the nominee dodged, the more Hawley's point landed. You could hear the frustration in their voice. And honestly, it was justified. When there's a chance that someone supported or aided violent environmental extremism, Even indirectly, the Senate has every right to dig deep. And when workers have literally been maimed by those actions, that's not ancient history. That's not salacious. That's accountability. So shout out to Senator Josh Hawley for refusing to let this slide, for speaking up for the loggers who never get their voices heard, for demanding straightforward answers, for saying what needed to be said. Whether people agree with him politically or not, today he showed exactly why oversight matters.